Hello, this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech number 88, looking at the coolest things you can do with a Sensei's Divining Top. Now, before we jump in too far, I do want to mention that Sensei's Divining Top has been banned in the modern format, not just because of how powerful it is, but also it really can slow down games. If you're going to play with Sensei's Divining Top in a competitive format like Legacy, you really need to know your deck, and if your opponent is playing really slowly with it, don't feel bad to call a judge and ask them to take a look at the game. This is an amazing, wonderful, incredible card, but it does have the drawback that if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, it can bring a game to a halt. Now, there's one combination that is not on this list, and it's Counterbalance, Sensei's Divining Top, which is probably one of the most powerful combinations in Legacy. I probably wouldn't have been able to do this list a year ago before Abrupt Decay had been printed. Now, I feel good playing against this combination because Abrupt Decay just crushes Counterbalance decks. Counterbalance decks are no fun to play against in Legacy, but they're extremely powerful and you should be aware of them. Abrupt Decay is just the type of card that put a lot of fun into the Legacy environment and is the type of R&D I want to see more of out of Wizards in the future. Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top is actually kind of fun in EDH. Every time I've put out a Counterbalance in EDH, I am shocked at the number of times that I am able to flip the same card on multiple people who just aren't paying attention in multiplayer. In the number 10 spot here, I have some combo bait. As you guys know, I'm not a huge combo fan, but you really need to be aware of how amazingly powerful Sensei's Divining Top is in storm type situations. There's been some really cool decks that used Grape Shot and cycling tops very quickly, especially when you can bring down their casting cost. I've even seen a few decks that will kill with Brain Freeze and some of the other cards that you're going to see later on this list. The number 9 spot here, this is actually, if we're looking at raw power, this is what I would probably have at the top. It's a little bit less fun, but anytime you can reshuffle your deck, Fetchlands being one of the best ways to do that, Sensei's Divining Top's value goes through the roof because you're basically scrying for the best of 3 cards and then reshuffling. And you don't have to spend the money on these very expensive Fetchlands. You can even use some of the less expensive older Fetchlands. They work just as well in an EDH environment because that half turn that it takes to really get these going is not that big of a deal. And in several decks, I would even recommend playing the Sensei's Divining Top with those fetches and with these fetches. In the number 8 spot here, I've got Dark Confidant. This is probably the card on the list I've killed myself the most with, although I did actually flip a Blightsteel Colossus with him once and still win that game. But being able to choose which card you're going to take damage or not take damage in the case of a land or a Mox is extremely important. That's why Sensei's Divining Top is great in Dark Confidant decks, in Legacy, and in Vintage. The number 7 spot here, I've got Future Sight. Being able to play the top card off of your deck is just incredible when you're able to make it that Sensei's Divining Top. It basically turns the top into 1 mana draw card. And if you combo it with something like Helm of Awakening, you can cruise through a large amount of your deck or all of your deck and draw everything. Now, the only thing that bothers me about Future Sight is that the border just doesn't look right. It really needs a Future Sight border. I'd be so happy with a Future Sight border. Also, check out Magus of the Future if you want another way to get Future Sight into your EDH decks. The number 6 spot here, I've got one of the most powerful cards in my mono green EDH deck. I love Lurking Predators. It is incredible. You get so much flexibility because you're able to put cards you don't want onto the bottom, and it just gets significantly better with the Sensei's Divining. In the number 5 spot here, I've got 2 different cards that work extremely well with Sensei's Divining Top because they take advantage of what's on top of your library. Oracle of Modiva and Garruk's Horde both just synergize so well, giving you basically extra cards every turn. The number 4 spot here, I've got Maelstrom Wander. pretty much any cascade benefits from being able to know what's coming up in your deck. Wanderer being my absolute favorite in EDH, but even something smaller like a Shardless Agent is a great honorable mention here. The number 3 spot here, I've got Miracles. Miracles are just so good when you combine them with Sensei's Divining Top. Not only are you controlling when you draw a miracle, but the more important part to remember is that when you cast this spell for its miracle cost, you get to ignore the phase limitations. So all of these sorceries can be played at instant speed on your opponent's turn if you draw them off of a Sensei's Divining Top activation. Terminus during your opponent's attack step is incredible, and Entreat the Angels at the end of your opponent's turn is just a game winner. I love these interactions. They take the luck out of miracles and give you some blowout incredible games. In the number 2 spot here, I've got one that's a little more complicated. I was playing in a vintage game this last week over at Card Kingdom, and my opponent missed this interaction because he had both of these cards out on the table. And Sensei's Divining Top, when combined with Voltaic Key, basically lets you draw extra cards for free. If you notice here, on the tap ability, draw a card, then put Sensei's Divining Top back on top of the owner's library, it comes after the colon. And that's very important because that putting it back on top is not part of the activation cost. It doesn't happen until the resolution of the effect. So you can tap the Sensei's Divining Top, put the ability to draw a card on top of the stack, use the Voltaic Key, untap the Sensei's Divining Top, tap the Sensei's Divining Top, again, put that second ability on top of the stack, then resolve the stack, draw a card, put the Sensei's Divining Top on top, draw a card again, and then the Sensei's Divining Top is not in play to get put back on top of owner's library. So you basically, for this 1 mana from the Voltaic Key, get to put that top directly back into your hand with an extra card. Great combination, great one to be aware of in Vintage. The last point that I want to come to is the strategic value of defending against hand destruction. Hymn to Turok and Thoughtseize are 2 of the most powerful cards out there in Vintage and in Legacy. The ability to leave the good cards on top of your deck until the turn that you need them, either to complete a combo or to attack your opponent or to use that targeted removal like an Abrupt Decay to get rid of your opponent's counterbalance, is extremely important. Protecting your resources, your cards from hand destruction, is a really strong benefit of putting a Sensei's Divining Top into a deck. Thanks. This has been Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech, looking at the top ways to use a top.